Welcome to Traveler's Tales. I am your host, Greg Alonzo. Today we will be taking a look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. However, before we begin, I would just like to remind you that we post new videos every Tuesday and Friday. The Epic of Gilgamesh is an epic poem from ancient Mesopotamia and was believed to be first written around 1800 before the Common Era. Most scholars agree that it is the earliest surviving great work of literature and the second oldest religious text, after the pyramid texts. These Egyptian writings date back to the Old Kingdom and center around funeral texts. With regard to the Epic of Gilgamesh, why should we care? Numerous scholars have drawn attention to the various themes, episodes, and verses indicating that the Epic of Gilgamesh had a substantial influence on the epic poems ascribed to Homer. With regard to the Bible, various themes, plot elements, and characters in the Epic of Gilgamesh have counterparts in the Hebrew Bible, most notably the account of the Garden of Eden, the advice from the Book of Ecclesiastes, and the Genesis flood narrative. The story centers around Gilgamesh, who is king of Uruk. Initially, he is a tyrant. However, through his former adversary, Enkidu, Gilgamesh becomes less despotic. So who is Enkidu? Initially, he was depicted as a sort of wild man. Later, he was pacified by the prostitute Shamhat. She, if you will, tamed the savage beast within him. Some in the academic community have made claim to an almost similar parallel drawn with the biblical Samson. Enkidu is often compared to Samson and Heracles in that he shares their strength. He is also fiercely independent and unruly in his defiance toward the gods. Gilgamesh and Enkidu set out for high adventure to take control of the sacred cedar forest. Along the way, they are confronted by demons and gods. Gilgamesh also offends the goddess Ishtar by spurning her advances. In retaliation, the gods kill Enkidu. Distraught over the death of Enkidu, Gilgamesh undertakes a long and perilous journey to discover the secret of eternal life. Through his many trials and tribulations, Gilgamesh learns that life, which you look for, you will never find, for the gods created man. They let death be his share, and life they withheld in their own hands. Nevertheless, because of his great building projects and survival from the Great Flood, the fame and popularity of the Gilgamesh epic has long surpassed the hero's life. As mentioned earlier, many themes and characters of the Epic of Gilgamesh can be found in the Hebrew Bible. The parallel between the stories of Enkidu and Shamhat and Adam and Eve have long been acknowledged by scholars. In both episodes, man was created from the soil by God. Both also lived in a natural setting amongst the animals. In both stories, men are involved with a woman who tempts them. In both stories, the men accept food from the women, cover their nakedness, and must leave his former realm, unable to return. The presence of a snake that steals a plant of immortality from the hero later in the Epic of Gilgamesh is another point of similarity. When it comes to the biblical flood, Genesis follows the Epic of Gilgamesh so closely that few doubt it derives from the Mesopotamian narrative. What is particularly noticeable is the way the Genesis flood story follows the Gilgamesh flood tale point by point and in the same order. Additional biblical parallels are Nebuchadnezzar's madness in the biblical book of Daniel, which draws on the Epic of Gilgamesh. Many characters in the Epic of Gilgamesh have mythical biblical parallels, most notably Ninti, the Sumerian goddess of life, who was created from Enki's rib to heal him after he had eaten forbidden flowers. Most of the scholar community believe that this story serves as the basis for the Adam and Eve in Genesis. Other biblical similarities include the wrestling match between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is paralleled with the story of Jacob and Esau. Lastly, Gilgamesh is mentioned in the Book of Giants, which is related to the Book of Enoch. How then does the Epic of Gilgamesh influence the writings attributed to Homer? The Epic of Gilgamesh influences the Greek writings by combining the power and tragedy of the Iliad with the wanderings and marvels of the Odyssey. It is a work of adventure, yet attempts to understand the fundamentals of human existence. The Epic of Gilgamesh is an inspiring work of literature that has influenced many cultures throughout the ages. In part 2 of the Epic of Gilgamesh, we will explore your questions and comments. As a reminder, we post new videos every Tuesday and Friday. Don't forget to hit the little bell icon to be notified each time we post new videos. Our email address and Instagram link are also posted below. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Traveler's Tales. Kartistos.